Good morning, Lambton County Council. Before I ask Mr. Beauchamp to take the roll call, I'd like to welcome Councillor Brown from St. Clair. He has been sworn in before we started, so go ahead, Mr. Beauchamp. Please take the roll call.
Thank you, Warden Marriott. Councillor Agar? Present. Thank you. Councillor Atkinson? Present. Thank you. Councillor Bushi? Here. Thank you. Councillor Bradley? Present. Thank you. Councillor Broad?
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Case? Present. Thank you. Councillor Cook? Present. Thank you. Councillor Dennis? Present. Thank you. Councillor Ferguson? Present. Thank you. Councillor Hand? Present. Thank you. Councillor Loosely? Present. Thank you. Councillor McRoberts? Present. Thank you. Councillor, alternate member to Councillor Steve Miller, Councillor Pat Brown. Present. Thank you. Councillor Sageman? Present. Thank you. Councillor Veen? I'll give a few seconds in case he is online. Councillor Veen? I'll mark him absent. Deputy Warden White? Present. Thank you. We have quorum.
Thank you. We acknowledge that this land on which we are gathered today is part of the ancestral land of the Chippewa, Ottawa, and Potawatomi peoples, referred to collectively as the Anishinaabe. It is through the connection of the Anishinaabe with the spirit of the land, water, and air that we recognize their unique cultures, traditions, and values. Together as treaty people, we have a shared responsibility to act with respect for the environment that sustains all life, protecting the future for those generations to come. I'd ask any member of council to declare pecuniary interest now or where it may arise in the meeting. Councillor Loosely.
Thank you, Warden Marriott. I'd like to declare a conflict of interest on 10B, which is the presentation from the EMS, and 15A, Committee A, regarding the EMS, due to the fact that my son started working part-time for the EMS.
Okay,
thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other declarations at this time? Yes, Mr.
Sorry, Warden Marriott, I forgot to add, and I have submitted the necessary paperwork to the clerk.
Okay, thank you very much. Item number 4, in camera. I'd look for a motion to go in camera. Today we're going to stay in the council chambers due to the construction outside the window of committee room 3. So I'll have to ask the members of the public to leave after the motion to go in camera. So I see a motion by Councillor Case, seconded by Councillor Loosely. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Will just be a minute before we switch over. Welcome back. Call the open session meeting to order, and please join me for a moment of silent reflection. Thank you. Item number 7, rise and report from in camera. Mr. Beauchamp, please.
Thank you, Warden Marriott. I can report that County Council met in camera this morning for 3 minutes to approve the Lambton County Council closed session minutes dated November 1st of 2023 and the Committee A.M. closed session minutes dated November 15th of 2023. To provide instructions regarding negotiations between Lambton Public Health and a third party on organizational matters, and to provide instructions on a proposed collective agreement between the county and Unifor 302. Thank you.
Thank you. Item number 8, donor recognition. We know firsthand the benefit of living in a community that cares. Approximately 1,500 donors give annually to enhance a wide array of county programs and services. These charitable gifts help provide the high quality and affordable services that respond to the needs of our community. These are some of the very generous donations made this year. Noel's Gift donated over $22,000, excuse me, and Blue Water Power donated $15,000 to the Ontario Student Nutrition Program, Lambton, supporting 43 local programs and serving nearly 10,000 students. This donation was received in fall of 2022, and management of the program was moved to the Victorian Order of Nurses in 2023. The VON continues the excellent work of the program in our community that has been achieved with the generous support of donors. The Villa Auxiliary, Lodge Auxiliary, and Manor Auxiliary all continue to provide incredible support for their respective homes. Don and Ann McGugan donated $5,000 to the Adult Day program. Ron Van Horn and Scott Ferguson donated several historical artifacts and paintings to the Lambton Heritage Museum and the Judith and Norman Alex Art Gallery. The famous 5 Sarnia Lambton Speaker Series donated over $5,500 to Lambton Circles, which was used towards post-secondary school supply costs for Circles families. On behalf of Lambton County Council, I would like to extend a sincere thank you to all the donors who have generously given to the County of Lambton this year. Item number 9, delegations. I'd look for a motion to allow the presenters to approach the rail. Deputy Warden White, Councillor Loosely seconds. All in favor of that? Opposed, if any? That's carried. First delegation is Jenna Simpson, Kate Wagar, Shaylin Hunter, members of the Petrolia Child Care Advocacy Group. We'd like to speak to County Council highlighting the child care crisis in Lambton County. Welcome, and you have 10 minutes.
Thank you so very much. Good morning. My name is Kate Wagar. I live at 478 First Avenue in Petrolia. We stand before you, last time we presented we were standing. We sit before you as a handful of working parents and grandparents that have rearranged our schedules to be a voice for those who cannot attend. We are the Petrolia Child Care Advocates, and we are here representing the 84% of children within Lambton County who do not have access to licensed child care. This is a crisis in dire need of acknowledgement and action. Over the last 9 months, we've realized we've embarked on something that could take 9 years, but we are prepared to see it through. Even if existing operators within Lambton County were functioning at 100% capacity, our access to childcare rate isn't conducive to facilitating a thriving economy. You are all elected advocates. We are here to hold you accountable for the needs of your constituents. We are here to collaborate a legacy movement showing how to make childcare accessible for rural communities across the country. Go for it. This is not blown out of proportion for impact. This is our reality. This is why some are forced to working part-time and retired grandparents are working harder than ever. This is why parents are leaving careers and families are struggling on single incomes. This is abysmal.
Meet Emma. Meet Emma, age 2. Emma is one of the children in the previous slides that does not have access to childcare. Her mom is trained as a registered nurse, but currently is not employed because she and her husband moved to Lambton County and don't have family to help with childcare. Emma has been on the wait list for licensed childcare since the day she was born. When Emma's parents were approved for their mortgage 5 years ago, Emma's mom was working. Emma's mom would like to work, and the family is worried about increasing mortgage rates when it comes to renew. Even when Emma starts school, without before and after care, it will be impossible for Emma's mom to go back to work as a registered nurse.
Emma's family lives in Sarnia, and I sure hope that no one in any of your circle of loved ones was waiting for surgery that needed to be postponed when her mother had to abruptly leave her position as an operating room nurse at Blue Water Health due to a last-minute oversight at her childcare facility.
Meet Christopher, age 3. Both of Christopher's parents are working. Thankfully, his grandparents are able to care for him 40 hours per week. But his grandfather is in poor health. The increasing appointments are making it less and less feasible for his grandparents to fill in full-time. Chris's mom is thinking about cutting back to part-time hours. She is a huge asset at her job at the nursing home. Feeling forced to cut back to part-time hours is a common story for families in Lambton County. This happens in every sector, from childcare to healthcare to education to social services to engineering and technology.
Christopher's grandparents shouldn't feel obligated to provide the childcare that our community is lacking. They should be allowed to focus on their own health and living the most of their retired days. Also, thank goodness for grandparents who are able to assist in childcare provision, but grandparents may not have the ability to fulfill social peer interactions and all of the learning that children obtain from being around other children. Again, these points are not hyperboles. We are living these issues every single day. How much longer can we lose? The adverse impacts are going to have significant detrimental consequences for all of us. Want to see homelessness continue to rise? Want to watch more people miss out on necessary health care? Want to die on a wait list waiting for long-term care? Let's continue to ignore childcare access, this imperative piece of social infrastructure.
We are here to bring this to your attention and to compel you to solve this crisis. I want to reiterate that in the Petrolia and Wyoming areas, there is currently a licensed center-based access rate among 0 to 4-year-olds of 16%. The provincial target, which we can all agree is a bare minimum, is 37%. That is a difference of more than 50% between our current access rate and the provincial target. We are asking you to fulfill your role. Across Ontario, service system managers, which in this case is the County of Lambton, are responsible for planning, administering, and operating licensed childcare and early years programs through direct service provision and/or third-party service agreements. Your performance on this file is appalling. It's time to stop strangling the economy with your inaction. How? Capital. Childcare centers cannot fill jobs for $18 an hour. Therefore, they are operating under capacity. In fact, they're operating at 70% capacity across the county. Therefore, despite thousands of children on wait lists in Lambton County, centers are operating under capacity. We're asking you to fund licensed childcare in Lambton County because there isn't any way around it. Despite increased funding from the province to support a higher wage floor, there is much work to do. The county must immediately invest $1,000 per year per licensed space into current third-party center-based operations in order to increase wages in the chronically low wage sector and bring those operations up to capacity. Secondly, county councillors must form an advisory committee immediately to plan for county-run childcare. Thirdly, and ultimately, we are asking for the county to resurrect county-run childcare. The simplest way to reduce this problem is to lead promptly and decisively. Every time these municipalities grow, the access rate decreases until you get a handle on this. Studies show that for every dollar invested in early childhood education, the broader economy receives between $1.50 and $2.80 in return. This county is prosperous enough, skilled enough, populous enough, and worthy enough for reliable, safe, and high-quality childcare. Choosing not to fund childcare is like choosing not to fund other critical infrastructure. Childcare is a sort of transportation network that gets parents to work and brings children from point A to point B safely and securely. Our children deserve dignity, protection, and education. You may associate sponsoring children with something that happens overseas, but we're asking you to sponsor a waitlisted Lambton County child like Emma or Christopher this Christmas and every Christmas. Thank you.
Thank you for your presentation. Are there any questions from council? Deputy Warden White.
Excuse me. Thank you, Warden Marriott. Thank you for your presentation. Just want to validate some of the things that I heard today, so I appreciate you bringing the issues forward. I would also add that, immediately following the years that would be accessed in childcare, a lot of kids are now presenting in schools without the social skills due to the lack of socialization that childcare does provide. And the problems that are discussed in terms of your forecast into the future, they're exacerbated in FDK and in the earlier years in elementary school. And I think if anyone knows any teachers, you would find validation in that point as well. So I just wanted to highlight that. I think it's an incredibly important discussion that we had, that you brought forward to us today. And my hope is that we will be able to receive some more information right as to our current status from staff, just an update if possible, and then perhaps we can have a deeper dive into this issue here.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Hand, please.
So my grandkids go to a before school program in Sarnia, and this week my daughter-in-law was informed that they're changing the start time to 7:30, which doesn't work for a lot of working moms. And the reason was resources. They don't have enough staff. So even if we can expand the facilities, We need to work on where can we get the staff, and or else we can't do it. So we need programs for getting more students at Lambton College, or however we're gonna manage increased graduations.
Yeah, we believe that the first place to go is to raise wages, because you can't attract people to a sector that doesn't pay a living wage.
Councillor Dennis.
Thank you, Warden Marriott, through you to the young ladies. Every delegation that comes here asking for money refers to their cause as a crisis. We've had about 5 or 6 delegations like yours, and every one of them categorizes their cause as a crisis. 70% of Canadians are living $200 a month away from insolvency. The fact of the matter is over the last 10 to 8 years, people are far better, worse off than they have ever been. To pay for your ask, there's only one taxpayer, and right now they're hurting desperately. So to pay for what you're asking is going to involve a substantial raise in taxes. So, like I say, you can only squeeze taxpayers to a point where there's just nothing there. And I understand where you're coming from. There was a tragedy in Petrolia not too long ago where a private or an independent child care provider was involved, and because of negligence, there was a tragedy. And I fully respect the work that professionals like yourself do. But unfortunately, we're in a situation where the governments are spending money on the wrong things, and we have to get our priorities straight. But I do understand where you're coming from. Having children taken care of allows parents to focus on work and other priorities, and my parents have done exactly what you've suggested. They've had to babysit my brother's kids when they should be enjoying their golden years and that sort of thing. I understand that perfectly well. Thank you.
Councillor Bradley, and then, do you like to respond? Yeah. Just push it once. To the lights on.
Okay, got it. So I understand what you're saying. We did make a point to say that childcare is a type of critical infrastructure, like a road that gets people to work, and that also gets children from point A to point B safely and securely. So if we were wondering why aren't people getting to work and there's no roads, it's a similar metaphor for getting people able to pay their mortgages, able to pay their property taxes, able to contribute to the society to their full capacity.
Councillor Bradley.
I thank you too for your presentation. I'm not going to give you tea and sympathy. What you need is action. This county council 10 years ago took us out of the public daycare business and took an asset the city had had for 30 years, Coronation Daycare Center, and closed it. It sold it to the private sector, in my view, in a deal that was questionable. So I guess my point is this is an investment. And that's the attitude we had back then. It's an investment in the future, not an expenditure in the sense of just throwing money away. So my question is going to go to the CAO. If the county wants to move back into a full role in public daycare services, what is the appropriate way to approach this? The budget is coming. How do we get something back to us to look at what the options are, given there's been quite a bit of research done, and we know from the past the difference between the private and the public. And the other thing I have to add in here is that I also think you need to add in the province and the federal government to be part of this, because that's where it was before and that's where it should be today. So I guess to the CAO, what's the appropriate motion to move this forward, to bring it to some sort of concrete package that can come to this county council.
Mr. Tifo, please.
Yes, thank you, Warden. Maybe before I address the question specifically, I'll address some of the initiatives that have been taken, because we certainly heard from the delegation today, and rightfully so, that there's a shortage of ECEs to staff the child care centers. And of course, with a shortage of ECEs, and there's a shortage of spots in those child care centers. And I know that Valerie Colasanti's group has certainly been working very closely with Lambton College in developing and training and producing additional ECEs. So helping that process. And then secondly, earlier this year, we're looking at, through different groups in the community, at how we can attract ECEs to the community, whether they're trained here or trained elsewhere. And I'm talking about necessarily newcomers. And so we've petitioned, not petitioned, but we've had discussions with the province and its Ontario nominee program to include and to add ECEs to that list, and I do believe the province did. So we're the groundswell in terms of creating additional ECE qualified individuals to staff these child care centers. There's been concrete steps taken on that. In terms of getting back into the business, so the county getting back into operating a child care center, I would recommend to county that they first receive a report on the current status, and I believe that was what Deputy Warden White was referring to, on the status of childcare spaces, availability, staffing from our social services division, and from there make a decision on next steps. I just want to make sure that County Council has sort of full 360 information before taking any motions. So we've got obviously a very good presentation from our delegation this morning. You've got a little bit of information in terms of the steps that have been taken over the last year in terms of attracting ECEs. I just want to provide the opportunity for social services to provide you with a sort of a state of childcare in Lambton County, so that you have all the information, all the concrete information before you. Yes, good question. We as staff will await direction from County Council on this. We knew that the delegation was coming. We're prepared to answer any questions that you may have through social services. In terms of the report, in terms of the additional efforts, we await County Council's directions in that regard.
Well, I'm still going to put forward a motion, because even looking at our schedule, we will not be discussing this till March or April of next year. So I personally would suggest that that information come back to County Council as expeditiously as possible. And I'm not saying we go back into that business, but I just want to look at all the options and do it. And I applaud the group that's come forward to raise the issue in Petrolia and here, because it needs to be elevated to the type of discussion we're having today.
Mr. Tifo.
And that's fair. And the reason I'm suggesting the path forward that I'm suggesting is so that you have all that information. As was mentioned today, the County Council, the Corporation of the County of Lambton is certainly the CSM when it comes to childcare. It certainly has funding in that regard. And that report can detail exactly how that funding is flowing through to the community. And the challenges, there are challenges within the community when it comes to childcare. So it'll give you a very good glimpse into what you've heard today.
Okay, I have Councillor Loosely, Councillor Sageman, and then Councillor Dennis.
Thank you, Warden Marriott. Ladies, thank you for that presentation. And I certainly support and understand the need for childcare in Petrolia and surrounding areas, so I really support that. And I think if it's appropriate at this time, Warden Marriott, I'd like to make a motion that we refer this to administration for a report back regarding options and cost. And I'll need a seconder for that.
Okay. Councillor Bradley seconds that.
Yeah, it would be nice to have it for budget deliberations if possible. If not, then we'd have to wait till later. But we usually do the budget like February, so it would be nice to get something back for the budget deliberations. But we'd really need a report back to see if it's feasible, if it can be done, include the province and the federal government as well. So as far as timing, February would be ideal for the budget if possible. Thank you.
Okay, so Councillor Bradley, you did second that motion?
Address the question of timing, so thank you.
Okay, so Councillor Sageman's next.
Thank you. Thank you for your presentation. I agree with everything that you said. My oldest is in second year university, and my youngest is heading off this fall. But the years from birth until school, we called them like they were horrible. We were in six different daycares. None of them were licensed. The only way we made it through is my wife is a teacher and I'm self-employed. So time off, and my wife was off and the kids were off, and if I needed to get them somewhere, I could go. Agree wholeheartedly with the report to address the situation. And I think that what you're talking about is a paradigm shift in our entire society in a living wage. And I think that we need to start looking at everything else has gotten more expensive and our wages are not keeping up. And I don't think that that is something that's going to change in the near future. So I wholeheartedly support everything that you've brought to us this morning. Thank you so much.
Councillor Dennis.
To the young lady again, what was your ask again? $1,000 per space, or you had said that earlier in your presentation. Would you mind repeating that again?
Yeah, so I actually responded to the RFP for expansion just as a project to see what the numbers were like. And I've kind of landed on $1,000 per year per licensed space. And that is actually for an expansion. It's probably cheaper to subsidize the existing spaces to get them up to capacity. But that's a ballpark. Across the county, over 500, I'm assuming?
What would you charge a child per day?
So with the Canada Early Wide Learning program, and I'm actually not a childcare operator. We just have become experts in this since realizing that this is a massive problem. There's a very prescriptive program that the federal government is rolling out. And so it does cap the cost for parents. It does cap the revenue stream for parents. And so that makes it really difficult to deliver higher wages. And that's why we're asking you to step in, because it is a multi-jurisdictional problem. And we're all gonna have to work together to get the revenue flowing.
$10 a day. Oh, $10, okay. And don't get me wrong, I agree 100% with the living wage. I brought in the fair wage concept at the Sarnia Council, which I intend to do here not in the not too distant future. I believe 100% that you can't work for squalor. So I believe that 100%. So thank you.
I think next is Deputy Warden White.
Thank you, Warden Marriott. Just a little confused. We're sort of addressing the delegation and debating at the same time. So I think I'll just sort of add the concept of $1,000 that was raised by the delegation. If we could just address that directly in that report, I would appreciate that, just so that, again, we have some context and some validation for what we've heard today. I think that would be important. And again, I think just since we're somewhat debating this, whether or not this motion is valid or not, I just want to reaffirm, I think, Councillor Sageman brought up an excellent point, and again, to continue to paint the picture of the economic reality of this, right? I was in a similar situation. I was the stay-at-home dad. I had to put my career on hold and take a job at midnight and work until 5 in the morning and then stay up with my kids every day. And my health was failing after a couple of years of that, significantly failing. And so the lost economic opportunities was very real for myself as a father. I had to prioritize my kids while sacrificing my own health. And again, I know this is part of the gig economy that we live in. We don't all have 9-to-5 jobs. And for those of us who have to sacrifice, we have to depend on whatever is available. in order to supplement our income. So anything that we can do as a county to help stabilize this family reality, and families aren't always two parents. We should also recognize that too. It's incumbent upon us. So this report is, I think, going to be incredibly important for us when we receive this in order to inform the actions that we take. So again, I appreciate this opportunity.
Okay. Next is Councillor Case, and then Councillor Loosely.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Warden. One of the things maybe I would like to suggest in the report that we get back is looking at private-public partnership opportunities that may be out there. There may be a way of us as a governing body to bring all groups together to try to help solve this problem as well. So maybe if some of that could be outlined in the report coming back to council, the opportunities to do that. I'm not sure what they are. I do appreciate the presentation. I'm a grandfather of 5 under the age of 9, and we are the secondary support, my wife and I, in many, many ways. So there is definitely a need for something to be done. I definitely support that, but I'm also interested in knowing what the opportunities there are out there for partnering to get the groups together and try to find a way forward in dealing with this issue. So if that could be included within the report, if the mover and seconder are okay with that, that's just something I would suggest. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Loosely.
Thank you, Warden Marriott, and I have no problem with that, if the seconder will agree. I think the point is we can debate this later on. Let's just get the report first and take a look at it. The other thing, ladies, I wanted to just clarify, I believe in the paper, it said that the province was increasing the wage to $23.86. Is that correct?
They're increasing the wage floor. So they will subsidize an operator for the difference between the current wage and $23 an hour. If you participate in the Canada-wide early learning program. Because there's such a gap between the 16% access rate and the 37% target, we don't think that that single attempt by the province is going to solve the problem here. It's a piece of the puzzle, but there's still a lot of work to do.
Thank you.
Okay. Are we ready to vote on the... Yeah, we'll read. I don't know if you ladies want to stay right through or not, but I guess we're getting close here. So Mr. Tifo, would you like to add something?
What we can do is reread that motion so that everybody's sort of on the same page, because it was added on to and modified for the last little while. So it's moved by Councillor Loosely, seconded by Councillor Bradley, that staff be instructed to report back to County Council on or before the 2024 budget deliberations on the following. A, the current status of childcare in Lambton County, including availability of spaces, the number of spaces occupied and or vacant. B, the current funding for childcare spaces available in Lambton County. And C, the steps taken and or to be taken to reasonably improve access to childcare in Lambton County, including opportunities for potential private and public partnerships.
Okay. All those in favor of the motion? Opposed, if any? That is carried. Thank you. And thank you for your presentation.
Thank you.
Our second delegation request is Gail Obadiah, Development Manager, Paula Benford, Development Coordinator, and Logan Keene, Urban Planner Technician of the Ontario Aboriginal Housing Support Services Corporation. We'll just see if they're online. And it looks like they have not joined us today, so we'll address that later if they do contact us. So moving on to item number 10, presentations. The first one is Susan Mills, a transit coordinator here on Shores Area Transit, will speak to council on its transit system in Blue Water, Kettle and Stony Point First Nation, Lambton Shores, North Middlesex, and South Huron. Welcome, Susan.
Thank you for having me here today. I'm hoping to bring some good news and some interesting news for our council regarding public transit. Yes, my name is Susan Mills. I'm the transit coordinator, and I've been in that role since July of last year. Before that, I was the manager for the Grand Bend Area Chamber of Commerce for about 10, 11 years. So as part of that role, we worked with the Sarnia Chamber and TSL and some other organizations, as well as various task forces within our area. And so transit, I didn't just start transit in July. I was sort of involved with it before that point. The genesis of our transit system was 2018 through 2020. We had a convergence of businesses and social agencies who had various meetings on different things in terms of access for their clients to appointments and health and wellness. And from the business perspective, it was a lack of workers. We had businesses contracting their business to match their hours to the workers they had. And through a number of meetings, two things bubbled up: public transit and affordable housing. Those two challenges are now at the forefront of a lot of political discussions, as we know. But there's one solution that we're working on is public transit. So volunteers and community stakeholders went from council to council to talk about the importance of public transit and how it could address both of those business and social agency situations. And the task force evolved to a committee that was working on a grant to the Sunset Foundation for the support of doing a community survey and some groundwork for a feasibility study. That moved at the same time that happened. We got wind that the Ontario government put together the Community Transportation Rural Program. And together with the volunteers and the municipality of Lambton Shores worked together to submit that grant to that program and was successful in gaining grant support for it. And even though 2020 was a pandemic year, a transit coordinator was hired, consultants were hired, a feasibility report was completed, routes and bus stops were developed in conjunction with community stakeholders, and so our system launched December 14th, 2020. Part of the community transportation's goals stemmed from a report that the Ontario government released for a plan for southwestern Ontario, which had a number of strategies in it, including one for transportation, where they recognized that a lot of southwestern Ontario communities were living in isolation. There wasn't a lot of inter-community connection. And this highlighted the need for public transit for within a community and inter-community. So through that, there was the concept that the grant would support public transit in areas where a private company would not be viable. So there was recognition that these small rural systems need assistance to launch and to maintain functioning. And that through these transportation networks, connecting communities together enables residents full access to the community amenity and assets, but ultimately also supports economic development and sustainability of those communities. So in beginning of 2022, coming out of the pandemic, there was a recognition that basically everybody had lost 2 years. When you're telling people to get on the bus and every level of government and social services telling people to stay at home, you can't really build successful ridership. So there was an additional $1 million provided, so we are now at $3 million over a period of the 7 years, which ends March 31st, 2025. We're unusual in the fact that our transit service serves our stakeholders that cross county and municipal lines. So Lambton Shores is the lead municipality on the grant and handles all the money management and administration. But the partners are Kettle and Stony Point First Nation, South Huron, Blue Water, and North Middlesex. Our mission statement is to level the playing field for all people in our community. So to provide equal access to all of our amenities, to help people get to work, to help people get to their appointments. And in so doing, we are contributing to the economic development and vibrancy of our communities. Some quick facts about us. We have $5 local and $10 long distance fares. We also have a monthly pass at $60, which provides unlimited travel. Just to put that in context, you can go from Sarnia to the end of the line, which is Sobeys Plaza in Grand Band, for $10. That's a one-way trip. If you have a monthly pass, and we do have a good number of workers with monthly passes, for $60, they can go up and down every single day, twice a day, and it's $60 a month. Children 12 and under, when accompanied by an adult, are free. Support persons who accompany a person living with a disability also travel for free. They are there to help with communication, mobility, and access to products and services. We run 2 buses and operate 4 routes and move through 22 towns with 52 bus stops. Our buses travel over 500,000 kilometers a year, and our driver's hours are in excess of 7,000 driver hours per year. Just a quick note, we contract with Voyago. I'm sure you've heard of them. They provide our buses and our drivers. So they handle the purchase of the bus, all of the maintenance of those buses, the hiring of the drivers, the training of the drivers, and we pay them a service rate plus fuel. So to give you an idea of what that looks like, we typically pay about $550,000 a year in service fees and another $112,000 in fuel. The feasibility study that the consultants put together advised that that was the best format for a rural transit system of our size. Obviously, if we were hiring the drivers, we would need more staff to administrate that. But by outsourcing it, we've made it more cost effective. So this is what our routes look like. They're color coded. Route 1 runs from Sarnia to Grand Band. We have 3 bus stops in Sarnia, Lambton College, Lambton Mall, and the Walmart Supercenter. And it travels through those stops and then into Forest, Arcona, Thedford, Kettle and Stony Point, Port Franks, up along 21 to Lambton Heritage Museum, through into Grand Band, and ends at Sobeys Plaza, which is our bus hub. Route 2 starts in Grand Band, and it moves through Dashwood, Exeter, Centralia, Huron Park, Lucan, and then it goes to Masonville Mall, and the southernmost bus stop is University Hospital on the Weston campus. Those routes run daily, year-round, other than Christmas Day, New Year's Day, and Good Friday. Routes 3 and 4 are our small little, definitely rural routes. Route 3 starts from Grand Band and works through to St. Joseph, Zurich, Hensel, Bayfield, and ends at Walmart in Goderich. Route 4 starts in Grand Band, goes through Park Hill, Elsa Craig, and ends in Strathroy. The Route 2 bus, and you're probably asking, how do we do 4 routes and 2 buses? So this is how it works. The Route 2 bus at noon switches over to operate routes 3 and 4. It does that, and then its last run of the day is its final Route 2. So post-pandemic success, what we've managed to accomplish. 2021, not surprisingly, as we're sort of coming out of that pandemic, we had 1,500 passengers. Most of those used the bus system in the latter quarter of that year. Coming into 2022, we had quite a jump in terms of our ridership at 7,851 passengers. 2022 was really the first year of our full operations as a transit agency. We needed a comprehensive marketing campaign, and we used multiple channels to communicate to our residents that we were still in operation and that we actually existed. One of the biggest bangs for the buck that we did was to graphically wrap both of our buses in key imagery and marketing messaging. And suddenly people were reporting back to me that they actually saw the bus. Because otherwise, if you've ever seen Voyago buses, they're all white. And a OneCare bus looks very much like a Leo bus, which looks very much like what our buses looked like before we wrapped them up. So we had those moving billboards. We also did billboard advertising, digital, web, print, anything we could do to get the message out that we were still around. The predecessor before me added made some route changes by adding Goderich and Strathroy to the end of the smaller runs. And that was perceived as being, in a sense, providing an anchor store, very much like a mall, because both of those urban centers for our residents are shopping centers and also medical diagnostic and treatment centers. Other key activities in 2022 was to provide a tactical communications plan, because up until that point, we had no way of letting passengers know if buses were pulled off the road due to weather, whether there was a breakdown in a bus. So you can imagine you're standing at a bus stop and that bus is not coming, and you don't know why, and we have no way of letting you know. So we alleviated that. We got bus numbers on every bus stop sign. We can now communicate to our passengers through texting, email. We have 1-800 number, Google Maps, transit apps, so 2 mobile apps, as well as our Facebook and website. This year, our goal was to double ridership. We have exceeded that. We reached that in October. So as you can see, for 2023, we've got 16,000 passengers. In October, we reached 16,251. I don't yet have November's ridership numbers. I will have those around the 10th of December. But I anticipate that by the end of December, we could perceivably reach 20,000 passenger trips. Revenue, as of the time this report was put together, was $81,000. We don't yet have the smart card cash for trips that comes out of a Bambora system. So it's simply an accounting reconciliation time delay. So I should have those numbers in December. So if anybody's interested in getting the updates, I'll have those in December. We reinstated the $5 and $10 fares that the predecessor had dropped down to $5 as a means of getting more ridership. And I'm going to tell you that I don't think that worked, dropping the dollar value. I think that the fares could have stayed at the same rate and still had the same passengers, because the issue was more of people not getting on the bus because they were being told to stay at home. We added 4 additional bus stops. One is at Stony Point Community on Army Camp Road, McDonald's in Exeter, Centralia, and most recently, Craigwheel Gardens Seniors Apartments in Elsa Craig. We also developed an agency day pass. So we were hearing from some agencies who either subsidize or pay for their clients' transportation to things like medical appointments, counseling appointments, or job interviews. And so we developed a pass whereby agencies can purchase those from us for $10, and they will provide unlimited amount of travel on the same day. So a client could go from Sarnia to Grand Band and Grand Band to Sarnia again, which normally would have been $20 if they're paying by cash. With the smart card, that agency paid $10 to cover the full cost. So this is our milestone chart. You can see where what we have accomplished and where we stand today under 2023 there. Our goal for 2024 is to double our ridership again to 32,000. Ultimately, in 2025, to reach 35,808 passenger trips. That is where our feasibility report states that our system would be sustainable. Revenue-wise, we want to reach 112,000 this year. As you can see, by 2025, we're looking to have our fare box revenue sitting at around 309,000. To that point, we are going to be raising the monthly pass amount from $60 to $80, perhaps ultimately to $100, depending. We're getting feedback from Transit Fare that runs that system for us that the average trip fare on a smart card monthly pass is about $3. So we want to bring that up to be a little bit more comparable with our $5 level. We are standing at about 1,625 trips or boardings per month. The feasibility study states that sustainability reaches 2,984 trips per month. So we're right now 54% of that ultimate goal. This is our ridership growth in another perspective. Those lovely yellow bars are our 2023 ridership. This simply provides a better view of our 946% growth of ridership since 2021. What I find interesting about 2023 in comparison to the other previous years is that we are not seeing a dramatic drop-off. So our area is famous for its summer bump and then a quieter fall and winter season. And as you can see from September and October ridership bars, they're still up there at around 2,000 passenger trips. So I'm interested to see what November looks like and whether that trend continues into our winter months going into spring. Our most used bus stops, not surprisingly, our hub stop, which is at Sobeys Plaza in Grand-Band, but also Sarnia's, Lambton College, Lambton Mall, and Masonville Mall. Those stops are very busy. They are points at which our passengers can also transfer and connect with Sarnia Transit and London Transit. So that gives them greater mobility to get to work in Sarnia and London and access jobs and shopping and medical appointments. Interestingly enough, within the small communities, the most used stop is the one in front of Forest's Library. Second only to that is the Welcome Center bus stop in Grand-Band. So when we look at our goals moving forward, as I mentioned, we want to double our ridership, raise the monthly pass. We want to increase our advertising revenue. We just started to do that. We're at $1,500 right now, but we want to ultimately get that up to between $30,000 and $50,000 in revenue. We have applied for a federal infrastructure grant for $387,000 so that we can install bus shelters. Key points, if you're a passenger, I mean, it's cold today, but what if it was raining on you as well, or it was snowing? It'd be nice to get out of the weather. So we also see this as a key ridership increase strategy. So shelters, solar lighting, benches to sit on, bike racks, that's all grant dependent. As I sit here today, this week, I am hoping that 2 transit shelters will be installed. We purchased 8 used ones from Stratford Transit. So there's going to be one at Points Plaza at Kettle and Stony Point. It's very windy there if you've ever stood there. And also at the Stony Community on Army Camp Road. And then I'm hoping a 3rd one before Christmas will be at the bus hub at Sobeys Plaza. We're looking to make connections with our neighboring transit systems. That's one of the goals of the Community Transportation Grant Program. So we want to make further connections, and right now we also want to continue marketing. Right now that's also grant dependent. Due to the cost of everything going up, money has been pulled in from other lines to continue our operations. So right now we actually don't have a marketing budget. Challenges and solutions that we have experienced in our development. No communication with passengers initially. As I mentioned, we addressed that with a tactical communications plan. There was no real marketing when I came in July. An aggressive marketing campaign was put into place to let people know we're still alive. We also had an issue with some stranded passengers. So if we had a broken down bus, if the buses were pulled, what do we do about that? And from a passenger perspective, that is perhaps the most important thing that we did was address that issue. Because for people who have never taken the bus before, the idea of getting onto a public bus and going somewhere is, what happens if I can't get back? What happens if that bus is full and I can't get on it? What happens if? So we came up with a no stranded passengers policy, which we worked out with a local taxi company, that if we did have a broken down bus, we're going to go and get those passengers and get them home. So if you traveled with us, for instance, and you came up to Grand Bend for the day to go to the beach, and you get to go on the last bus heading back to Sarnia, and you can't because it's full, we're going to get you home, and it's going to be at our cost. And that sounds like it might have cost us a lot of money, and it probably has cost us maybe $1,000. But in terms of the integrity of our system and building trust with our passengers, it's immeasurable. We also brought in some foundational policies. Since we were accepting advertising, we needed an advertising policy. We brought in a passenger courtesy and safety policy. We actually had to define passenger behavior on our buses. Not that we had any issues, but we wanted to prevent issues. So we also installed a security camera to view the passenger compartment of the bus. So it's amazing how well people behave when they know they're being recorded. In terms of ridership, here's both a challenge and a solution. We want to increase our ridership. We want to get to that 35,000 ridership threshold. But at the same time, building that ridership is also a challenge. So this summer, Route 1 exploded. We had many Lambton College students coming up into the area, backfilling open work positions. They were going to Arcona, Forest, Port Franks, Grand Bend, Exeter. They're still coming up. Beginning in July, I worked out with a taxi that he would pick up those extra students to get them off of our regular bus, because I was getting complaints from residents in Forest that they couldn't get on the bus because it was already full when it left Sarnia. So we started an employee shuttle. That 6-passenger taxi van soon was outcapacitated, and we then hired buses from Lambton Elderly Outreach to run employee shuttles, especially on Saturdays and Sundays. And here we are in November, and I'm still running a shuttle, not the Lambton Elderly Outreach buses, but I'm still running a taxi employee shuttle to make sure those students are getting up to jobs. So between our regular bus, which holds 20 passengers, and the taxi, we're still seeing about 24 student workers coming into the area every Saturday, Sunday.
Excuse me, Susan,
Yeah.
I want to give enough time for council to ask questions. So
Okay.
we're over quite a bit here.
I think that's basically the challenges and solutions was my last point there. So just that ridership growth is a challenge, but it's also part of our solution.
Thank you. Are there questions from Councillor Agar, please?
Presentation. I'm just wondering, I don't see your last stops in Sarnia. Do you never run anything further south? like, I'm from St. Clair, and what would you have to do to attach? Like, a lot of my people wouldn't want to go to Goderich anyways, but can you get it in on that?
You'd think it would be easy just to add one bus stop, but it actually doesn't, because each bus stop takes at least 5 minutes to add to a schedule. And the buses are actually scheduled right now to meet up, so people can transfer between routes. So no, we don't go below Sarnia. We have, I guess technically, Lambton Mall would be the most southern bus stop that we have. But at Lambton Mall, that does mean that somebody could transfer over to Sarnia Transit. But I have had phone calls from residents in that area, Corunna, Petrolia especially, Kamlaki. Couldn't you just add, just bring the bus down for one bus stop? And I'd absolutely love to. We would need some more money because it would be extra driver's hours, extra fuel. And I mean, we can address the schedule, we can tailor it, but we need extra resources to do that.
Okay. Councillor Loosely.
Yeah, thank you, Ward Merritt, and through you, looking at this, and I know we've got an item on the agenda later on that we can discuss, but I look at you going down the 402. Would you ever consider on a trial basis, say, stopping at Reese's Corners to allow Don, Euphemia, Oil Springs, Enniskillen, Petrolia, Plimpton, Wyoming to maybe get on the bus there? Just as a thought on a trial basis. Thank you.
I can certainly take it under advisement. Like I said, each bus stop, every time we move that bus stop off of its route, we lose about 5 minutes minimum in a schedule. So each bus stop adjusts that schedule. It is possible, though, for instance, if someone was taking the Route 4, coming down into Strathroy, to connect with Strathroy, Caradoc Transit, either in Sarnia, you can connect with it, in London you can connect with it, and Strathroy you can connect with it. And that intercommunity bus travels from Sarnia to London and back several times a day. So you can connect with it at Shops on Sydenham in Strathroy, downtown London, and also I think it also goes into Lambton Mall and Bayside Terminal in Sarnia to move, if you were moving directly between those areas.
Follow up, Councillor Loosely.
Thank you, Ward Merritt, and through you, I know it's 5 minutes, but you'd be able to serve 5 or 6 municipalities. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions? Councillor Bradley.
Yeah, thank you. Do you have any indication, we've been trying to find out whether the government's going to continue to extend this subsidy? Because there are other parties that want to come into the market too, and I expect an announcement very, very soon on direct Sarnia, Strathroy to London bus service. But the subsidy itself, without the subsidy, the service doesn't operate, correct?
Right. Are you talking about the gas tax subsidy for that transit system?
Subsidy that has allowed this private company to provide this service. Because they're being subsidized, correct?
Until March 31st, 2025. We are hearing rumors that that program may be extended beyond March 31st, 2025. So that would enable other small rural systems to come into play and connect up. So for instance, we could look, if that money were to continue, we could put in, say, a grant to provide more public transit outside of Sarnia to other areas of Lambton County and connect our systems up more completely for people.
It's a discussion we can have offline about service. Formerly, we were told that the former administration in St. Clair did not want a bus service between Sarnia and St. Clair because it would bring people from St. Clair in to spend their money. And so I'm not making this up. So we'd be open to explore that because it's a natural. Is there other stuff beside Corona down there? There is. Okay. Yeah.
Yes, Todd?
No.
Just waiting for my microphone. Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Warden, through you to the presenter. Again, where we are right now, and obviously we need the funding, as Mayor Mike Bradley said earlier, and being that there may be some changes coming, it might be a good opportunity for us to maybe work with your organization and the other one that serves part of Middlesex and throws through the Sarnia to see what we could do preliminarily to see if there's a way we can make something like this work. So when that funding comes along, then we're all positioned to be able to take advantage of it. If we don't do anything at all and the funding comes along, we're going to miss the bus, excuse the pun. And that's the problem that I see, and that's my concern. I think there's a great opportunity for maybe some discussion on maybe what can happen. And as much as I really respect Mayor Loosely's comments, he forgot about the GWA, the Greater Warwick area, when he introduced his suggestion. But I do see there's an opportunity to get together, have those discussions now, and see what could work. And maybe we have to use both networks, maybe your network and the other as well, to be able to make it work for our residents in Lambton County. But I see that as an opportunity that we should probably take in furthering our opportunity to try to get some of these funding dollars to be able to improve this service and expand it. So that's just a comment, Mr. Warden, from me. I'd be happy to make a motion at the appropriate time, but at the same time, I'll listen to maybe some other people have some ideas on that. Thank you.
Thank you. I think Councillor Sageman's next.
Thank you, Warden. Two key takeaways, I think, are number one, we've been running a case study now for years, and I think we've proven that this is necessary. I think that because of lack of affordable housing, lack of housing in general, in the areas where the jobs are, I think it's become critical to have a way of getting people to and from their place of employment because they can't afford to live there. And something else that I think, I'm sure all of us think about this, but when we look at our budgeting and we look at our units municipally and countywide, not all of them make money. So I think some services, arenas, things like that, public parks, things like that, we provide because they're necessary and they don't have an immediate economic payoff that we can see on paper at budget time. But I think from an economic standpoint, if Tim Hortons doesn't have to close their restaurant because they don't have staff, then that's an economic spinoff that it's intangible, but it's something we need to recognize, that this is getting people to jobs when they can't otherwise afford to get there. So it's important. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions or comments? Councillor Dennis.
Thank you, Councillor Marriott. Just a quick comment. Kudos to you. I come from the private sector, and I got to tell you, I'm thoroughly impressed with the way you run your company or the service. You clearly know what you're doing, and you do a fantastic job. I'm very impressed with your presentation. You seem to like what you do, and you do a darn good job at what you're doing. Keep it up. Yeah, thank you.
I made a point of saying that I didn't come from a transit background into this. What I came with was a knowledge of the communities that I work with and the businesses, and where people are going for their medical appointments and their shopping and where their needs are. And I think that's key to the success of any of the small rural systems. We're all similar, but we're different. We're tailored to the communities that we serve. So knowing how residents within a particular area, where they're going for school, work, where they're needing to access specialty realty that they may not have in their home community is essential, and you build the system around that.
Okay, look for movement forward. Did somebody, I thought, had a motion? Councillor Bradley?
We're looking for advice here. We're trying to work this into the discussion that's going on about inter-rural transportation in Lambton County. And to me, a key component of that is for us to advocate to the province to continue the subsidy beyond the period of time when it's set to expire, and to have this greater discussion about St. Clair and other areas do you call it, the Greater what?
Greater Warwick area.
Greater Warwick.
Not the GTA, Greater Warwick area.
Can we mix, because we need to have, like, this is a huge step forward, what's happened with the discussion by the county after we failed a few years ago. And you're a really good example of, I know it's a challenge, but how to make it work. So I'm just trying to figure out how we work this into the greater discussion we're having about inter-rural transportation, intercity transportation in this county.
Is that on? Oh, yeah. The Community Transportation Grant provides the ability to do a startup and to work out the kinks and get it working. And then our goal is to transfer over to funding from the Ontario Gas Tax Fund. And when you get to that point, population is really, truly important. For us, because we're sort of a cross-county, cross-municipality little group, our population in Lambton Shores is like 11,000. North Middlesex is 6,000 and change. Individually, we're so small that we couldn't do this, but collectively, our population in that service area is 37,000 people plus. And the gas tax fund pays $8.44 per resident. So when we look at expanding the system, that's something to keep your eye on, because they'll pay that per resident and they'll pay an additional 30 cents per passenger trip. And that is every single year. So all of us who are driving, we are contributing into that tax fund. And the only way really you're getting it back is through public transit. And I know that it supports roads and what have you. So population that's being served and brought in to that calculation is really important.
We're going to refer that idea and other ideas that have been brought out here to that greater discussion we're going to have on the inter-community transportation of Lambton County, because this is good. This has activated all this. So if we could refer Mayor Loosely and Mayor Case and Mayor Agar's suggestions to that discussion.
Okay.
Which I assume will not take place till the new year at some point.
Okay, that's a motion. Seconded by Councillor Case. Further discussion? All in favor? Opposed, if any? That's carried. Thank you. Thank you for your presentation. Oh, really? Oh, okay. So we're going to back up a little bit to item number 9. Our second delegation, Gail Obadiah, is now online. So as soon as she's queued up, there she is. Welcome, Gail. You have 10 minutes.
Thank you. Okay. Thank you so much. And my apologies for not being on earlier. With technology we have these days, I was assuming that the presentation link would have been automatically in my calendar, and I actually thought it was tomorrow. So my apologies for that, but I'm here now. So I'll try to quickly go through the presentation that we have for the Sarnia Friendship Center with the affordable housing component to it. Let me see if I can share my screen here. Where is it here? Oh, here it is. I'm not used to working in Zoom either. Okay. Can you all see this now?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, so we have the cover page here listed as a Sarnia draft. So just to get you up to speed with what's happened here, we were planning on having this go under construction this fall. We did set this whole project out for tender a couple months ago, and it came back in way over budget. It was $4 million over budget from what we were expecting it to be. So we've spent the last little while going back and forth with the architect, trying to do some value engineering, getting the contractors to remove some things, rebid, and we were still over too much. So we've had to go back to the table and do some major reductions in square footage in order to bring this back to fit within our budget. So this what I'm showing you here today is a draft. We just had a meeting with the Friendship Center earlier this week to go over what the plans were with this, and we're still under confirming everything with it. So everything is just in draft form right now. So that's the quick explanation for this. This here is the original rendering of the building as it would have looked had we been able to go ahead with the original plans. So right here, you will see there is, this is the main front entrance to the Friendship Center. And along the side past these trees, that would be the main entrance to the residential portion of the building. This particular slide here is showing the original building footprint, which sort of is shaped in like a U. That was the original footprint of the building, and we've had to decrease it. We were under discussion whether to go with the red outline or the blue outline, basically placement where the building would go. With our discussions with the Friendship Center the other day, we have decided to go with the blue outline. So we will be revising the site plan to the blue, where the blue outline is indicated for the revised building footprint. And with this smaller footprint, we were able to put additional parking in as well. And we will be leaving obviously more green space, which we are working with the Friendship Center to how they can tailor that to some of their outdoor programming. So here you will see that we are down to 36,044 square feet to the building. This is just a front look of what the building would have looked like before. So we will still have a little bit of this overhang and the main entrance into the Friendship Center in this new revised design. It will still look like this. We won't have as much of an over tier towards the end or the tiered building. It's going to be straight up now. This is just an outdoor rendering of what the outside courtyard would look like in our, this is the old rendering, but it'll still be somewhat the same to what that will look like. We have an interior shot of the program room that will have large windows, so we'll be able to have a lot of the outdoors. It'll seem like the outdoors are in their programming room area. This is just another shot of the inside. Inside the Friendship Center, we did have stairs going up to the second level prior to, but the new revised design will not have the stairs, but we will still have this open area that will look very similar to this. So the unit breakdown that we have, we are still looking at 40 residential units. We have 16 one-bedroom units, which 3 of them will be barrier-free. We have 16 two-bedroom units, and 3 of those will be barrier-free. And we are left with 8 3-bedroom units, and 2 of those ones will be barrier-free. Here is a quick outline of the new revised plan. This is showing this full area that is sort of in the green bluish is the Friendship Center, the outline of the Friendship Center. So here you will see the main entrance coming in. And on the side, this is the main entrance coming into the residential portion with the elevator going up into the residential units. This is an outline of what you will see on the 2nd and 3rd floor layout. So we have the different number of bedrooms laid out color coded. So we have 3 bedrooms on the outside here, and there are the 1 bedrooms on the other outside, and then the inside we have some 2-bedroom units. The 4th and 5th floors, they were slightly different, but it's just expressing, you'll see the 3 bedrooms on the outside. For the most part, the 1, 2, and 3 bedrooms are pretty much uniform. There may be a couple differences. I think on the interior ones have a slightly different, but for the most part, the 1, 2, and 3 bedroom unit types are basically the same. And just in our summary here, it is still a 5-story building. We are down to 36,044 square feet, where we originally had 47. So we have compressed the building quite a bit. We have 40 total residential units. As I noted before, 16 1-bedrooms, 16 2-bedrooms, and 8 3-bedrooms. We are following the percentage of 20% with the units being barrier-free, totaling 8 units. And all of the residential units are now located through floors 2 to 5. Initially, like the original plan, we had 3 units on the main floor. And the ground floor is just the Friendship Center, and we have service areas for the residential. And so we've had quite a few challenges with this development, which is why it has been ongoing and we haven't gone into construction yet. We've ran into quite a few barriers and challenges throughout the whole process of getting to groundbreaking. And that is the end of the presentation. So may I leave the floor open for discussion or questions?
Thank you, Gail, for that presentation. Any questions from council? Starting with Councillor Hand.
I was just wondering who gets to move in, or how is that managed? There's a list somewhere, or when it's built?
So, yeah, Ontario Aboriginal Housing Services has a central applicant registry. So anybody can go on there that self-identifies with Indigenous background, can go on the central registry, and then we pull from our wait lists from the central applicant registry. And it is based on areas. So if an applicant is applying, it will ask, what area do you reside in, and would you be willing to move? So that when we do go through them, we can see and suit the applicants close to where their location is.
Thank you.
Deputy Warden, do you have a question?
Yes, thank you, Warden Marriott. Thank you for your presentation. I apologize if this was already mentioned while I was jumping from one seat to another. I might have missed it. What is the updated timeline? And second question is there any consideration to future development of accessory dwelling units should the financial opportunity arise with this new footprint that you're presenting?
To answer the first question, our tentative schedule now is totally anchoring on getting the final approval and confirmation with the Friendship Center for the revised plan this week from our meeting that we had earlier this week. We did make a couple revisions to the plan that I showed you today. They're very minor, but it will work out better for their programming. So we are hoping to have that buttoned up by next week. And then the architect has to go back to doing all of the construction documents, revising them all to suit this new plan. So they are looking at end of February completion. So we're looking around March to set this back out. And we want to do design build this time so that we can expedite our schedule and also keep our budget in line while working with a design build person. And what was your second question? Sorry.
Thank you. The consideration of using some of that expanded green space in the future to potentially host some accessory dwelling units, so external dwelling units should the financial opportunity present itself in the future.
That's not something that was discussed, although if that was presented and needed, I'm sure that we would be open for discussion, and if everything was feasible and we were able to do something like that, we would certainly look at that. At this point, the Friendship Center is really pleased to be having that outdoor space for some outdoor programming, which is very much in line with their supports and program services that they provide.
Any further questions? Councillor Dennis.
Thank you, Warden. In a perfect world, if everything goes lickety, nice and smooth, when in a perfect world would you like to see a shovel in the ground? If everything goes smooth, ideally.
We'll be looking at April, May of next year to get started.
Nice.
If everything's perfect, which it has not been with this development.
Okay, I would like to thank you, Gail, again for your presentation, and the best of luck.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
We'll move back to item number 10B. Stephen Turner, Manager, Lambton EMS, would like to speak to Council to provide details regarding Lambton EMS proposed master plan 2024 to 2028. Welcome, Stephen.
Thank you very much. Well, good morning. My name is Stephen Turner, and I'm the manager of Lambton Emergency Medical Services. It's my pleasure to present the master plan proposing our path forward for the next 5 years. By way of background, prior to provincial downloading in 2000, Lambton County was served by several independent ambulance operators. Lambton County assumed responsibility for the delivery of land ambulance after downloading, amalgamating these services into what now is Lambton EMS. There's been a little change to the level of 911 service since 2008, when Lambton County converted stations that had nighttime callback to 24-hour daily service. Since then, a strategic plan was developed for the period of 2015 to 2019. The community paramedic program was introduced, and most recently in 2022, Council approved the addition of 12 additional service hours of daytime coverage for Sarnia to address increasing call volumes and workload. As reported to Council, Lambton EMS continues to meet its service commitments. However, response times and workloads have been increasing, as noticed by staff, the public, and Council. In response, staff embarked on an update to the service master plan with the intent to look back on past performance, spot trends, model future demand, and identify opportunities for improvement. These improvements opportunities include workload, response times, efficiency, and staff wellness. You'll note of the 16 recommendations in the master plan, staff wellness is listed first. This is very intentional. Our staff are central to our operations, and their well-being should be foremost responsibility. Without them, we could not possibly provide the outstanding care to the community that our team provides day in and day out. The master plan has 3 main objectives. First is to identify any opportunities to improve the way we do business using the resources we currently have. Second is to identify if our assets are in the right place to best serve the community. And third, to identify if any additional resources are needed to service demand over the next 5 years. EMS faces several challenges on the road ahead. The most pressing is the fact that our call volume is increasing at a pace that's 24 times the rate of growth of Lambton's population. With an annual call volume growth of 5.9% Over the next 5 years, demand for service will have increased 30%. The low gray line on this graph here demonstrates what our call volume would be if service demand was directly proportional to population growth. However, the dark blue line represents the projected future call demand, and the range lines to the sides are plus minus 10% of that projection. This is why we're doing a 5-year master plan and not a 10-year master plan. The crystal ball gets a little foggy past that. Ambulance service demand is primarily driven by the medical needs of an aging population. At present, those over age 65 account for more than half of our call volume. However, they represent only 25% of the population. This graph might be a little hard to see, but the trend is only going to accelerate in the years ahead. The graph on the left demonstrates Lambton County's population pyramid. The dark blue bars represent the proportion of the population in each 5-year cohort. The light blue bars represent the proportion of the EMS population in each of these 5-year bands. So as an example, Lambton County's cohort of aged 80 to 84-year-olds accounts for 3% of our population, but they account for almost 10% of all EMS calls. As the group of our residents over age 65 grow larger, this will accelerate and increase our call volume as well. Added to the pressures of an aging population are those of an increasingly marginalized population. Between 2021 and 2022, Lambton EMS has seen a doubling of calls for service for people who are underhoused or homeless. Our service has responded to a growing number of calls for mental health concerns and overdoses, but these challenges are ones that are disproportionately experienced by those who do not have secure shelter. Our service will need to develop new strategies to respond compassionately and effectively to the needs of these members of our community. While Lambton EMS has continued to meet its response time targets, they continue to trend upwards in most areas of the county. This occurs, of course, as call volumes increase and capacity within the system is used up. While we traditionally look at 90th percentile response times in the aggregate, it's really important now that we drill down and look at trends on a community-by-community basis. Since 64% of our calls are in Sarnia, where 90th percentile response times are around 8 minutes. This can obscure the response time trends in other communities around the county if we don't monitor those individually. This graphic demonstrates that there are several communities facing increasing response time pressures, with 90th percentile response times approaching 30 minutes in some areas. Unit hour utilization is another key performance indicator that describes the health of an ambulance service. It's the percentage of all service hours that are resources not available to respond to a tasking. Operators must ensure that there is sufficient capacity to respond to calls while not overworking the crews. The industry standard is generally accepted at between 30 to 40%. In these graphs, you can see that 3 of our stations will surpass the 35% threshold within the next 5 years, and a 4th will follow shortly thereafter. This is a key reason for the recommendation to add 3 additional ambulances to service peak demand hours over the 5-year horizon of the master plan. There are rare occasions when we don't have any ambulances to send when somebody calls 911. We call these code blacks. Currently, that happens about 36 times per year. However, if the current service level remains unchanged, by 2028, this will grow to about 200 times per year. The orange line in the graph demonstrates, though, that with the addition of the recommended resources, we can hold the code black frequency around the same level that it sits right now for the next 5 years. But we'll also need to change the way we use our current resources. While only 1/3 of our calls occur at night, we provide almost half of all our staffing hours during this period. Shifting some of our service hours from nighttime to daytime can help improve our operating efficiency with our existing resources and match our resources to when service demand occurs. Another strategy to improve our efficiency is to evaluate how and when we move our fleet. These graphs represent the movement of our fleet to provide balanced coverage in other areas when those stations are sent on calls. As you may notice, in some cases, this movement is beneficial and can help reduce response times, and in other circumstances, it can actually worsen response times. We undertook a really detailed analysis of these movements and found ways to reduce standby movement by over 25%. We anticipate that this will help to improve response times in the rural areas of the county, reduce wear and tear on the fleet and staff, and provide a cost savings in fuel consumption of approximately $50,000 a year. This graph here shows how the resources from across the county are drawn into Sarnia to service call demand while leaving other areas unguarded. Brights Grove and Corunna are particularly prone to being pulled into the city. Brigden provides about 25% of all standby coverage in the county, which results in some of the prolonged response times seen in Doña. Similar trends are noticed in Watford, Thetford, and updates to the service deployment plan will aim to keep Brigden and Watford in their home areas more often, helping to improve response times across the county, especially for Brook Alvinston and Doña. This is a heat map of all the potentially life-threatening calls over the past 5 years. Around, I think, about 80,000 calls here. The lighter dots represent faster response times. The darker dots are longer response times. The larger the dot, the more frequently we responded to calls in that area. And so when we see large, dark dots, those are areas that are cause for concern for us. When we evaluate this heat map, several areas of focus become evident. In Sarnia East, there's a large volume of calls that experience longer response times. The Brights Grove station is not well positioned to service these calls, and it has delayed access to the 402. There's a service gap in Plimpton, Wyoming, especially along the lakeshore, where population growth is occurring, and Lambton EMS does not currently have any resources in the township. There's a concentration of calls in Kettle and Stony Point. Response times to the First Nation can be delayed on occasion if Forest or Thetford are assigned on calls or standbys in other areas. And Port Frank shows a note of calls with longer response times, and the Pecuniary has a large number of calls with very prolonged response times. It's also important to note while there are stations in both Thetford and Watford, response times there are prolonged as these crews are often on standby assignments in other areas. And while the southeast region of the county is less densely populated, response times to the area can be upwards of 30 minutes, again owing to Brigden and Watford frequently being assigned on standbys in other communities. The proposed service changes aim to address these areas of concern. Through the analysis of response times, current and future service demands, population growth, geography, the master plan recommends the following key changes. Adding 36 hours of service. That'll provide 3 peak operating 12-hour ambulances operating 12 hours a day to address the peak area hours of demand. Relocating Brights Grove, Grand Bend, and Thetford to create better response coverage arcs. Constructing new stations, including a headquarters in Sarnia East, and new posts in Kamlaki and near the Pecuniary. And reallocating the Thetford service hours to Forest. The nighttime service hours from Thetford can be then placed where they're most needed, either in Sarnia or the southeast, once the data is analyzed following the changes implemented in the first 3 years. As proposed, the number of stations operated by Lambton EMS will not change, but 3 stations are recommended for relocation. This is what the new locations would look like as mapped. These station relocations provide the opportunity to better utilize the existing resources that we have and helps to avoid the need for additional staffing enhancements beyond those proposed, which would be costlier in the long term. Going through some of the rationale, the proposed relocation of Brights Grove to Sarnia East provides improved service coverage to Sarnia, the 402, and expands response coverage arcs and maintains good response time to Brights Grove while better leveraging the tiered response agreement we have in place with Sarnia Fire Rescue Services. Currently, when EMS and fire depart from the same location at the same time, they're likely going to arrive at the scene at the same time, which kind of negates the purpose of the agreement. The construction of a headquarters will allow the service to bring operations, administration, training, and logistics under the same roof. Importantly, 10-minute response times will likely be enhanced to Brights Grove, as both headquarters and the proposed Kamlaki station are within 10 minutes of the area. Lambton EMS currently does not have any assets positioned in Plimpton, Wyoming, but we're seeing service demand growth and slower response times along the lakeshore. Positioning an ambulance in the Kamlaki area helps to fill a service gap while providing backup coverage for both Sarnia and Forest stations. Grand Bend is currently located in the upper corner of Lambton County and provides very limited service to areas outside of that community. Its utilization is 8%, and it's not often moved to other communities to provide standby coverage. Relocation closer to the Pecuniary addresses a significant service gap at the park and Port Franks, while maintaining coverage to Grand Bend within 10 minutes. Backup coverage for Grand Bend can arrive from Park Hill within 15 minutes. Since the Pecuniary location can serve Thedford within 10 minutes as well, this relocation allows for the reallocation of Thedford's service hours. Reallocation of Thedford's service hours can be done without compromising response to the community. The Thedford ambulance responds to about 1.2 calls every 24 hours. It's frequently sent to Forest for standby coverage, resulting in being out of community over 40% of the time. By moving the daytime hours from Thedford to Forest, we can reduce fleet movement while maintaining that 10-minute response time to Thedford from the Pecuniary station and 15-minute response time from Forest station. As this is the last element of the strategy, we'll evaluate the impacts of the other changes that we've made to determine where best to place the remaining 12 hours of service from Thedford. Currently, there are 10 ambulances staffed on a 24-hour basis and 1 ambulance staffed for 12 daytime hours, providing Lambton with 11 ambulances during peak demand. Sarnia accounts for 64% of all calls, but only has 32% of EMS resources positioned there, resulting in a significant draw into Sarnia from the rest of the county. The proposed enhancements and relocations will allow for 15 ambulances on duty during peak hours, with 47% of peak hour service located in Sarnia. This should markedly reduce the need for ambulances from the rest of the county to be drawn into the city and improve response times countywide. The proposed timeline would see the addition of 12 hours of service and the construction of a new station in each of the next 3 years. In the 4th year, once all movements and enhancements have been implemented, then the 12 hours of daytime service from Thedford can safely be relocated to Forest, and we'll evaluate where the remaining 12 hours of service from Thedford should be reallocated based on the results of the strategies of the master plan. The measures within the master plan are the ones we can take locally to improve efficiency. However, there will also be much need for a transformation in how we provide care in the future. Much of this will be dependent on collaboration with our partners locally and in the provincial government. Many people call 911 because they don't know where else to turn for help and for emergency health system access. But often they don't need emergency care. Emergency medical services are often seen as a gateway into healthcare, where few other community options and opportunities for primary care exist. Emergency care is one of the most expensive areas in health system, so it'll be essential for us to do a better job of getting people connected with the care they need in the time they need it. For those who do not have urgent care needs, developing pathways to family doctors rather than emergency departments, or scheduling appointments with our community paramedics rather than sending ambulances right away, can start to provide patients with the right care, the right place, and the right time. Enhanced integration with our community partners and a readiness to meet the care needs of our citizens are crucial elements in achieving sustainability in a system where growth and demand far outpaces the growth of our population. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Mr. Turner. Councillor Bradley.
Thanks for the presentation. I think I've got some questions, and I'm sure others do too. I think it's a big step after we went to 24-hour service throughout the county. I think having this plan is good. And having said that, though, I'm having a great deal of difficulty understanding the closure of Brights Grove to move it 10 or 15 minutes away from where the population growth is. And that I'm struggling with, but that's what's leading into the next question, is what consultation will happen with the local communities like Grand Bend, Lambton Shores, Plimpton, Wyoming, and the others that are dramatically impacted by the shift of the service?
Mr. Turner, please.
Through you, Warden. Thank you, Councillor, for the question. Twofold in the answer there. Through all of this, service is intended to be enhanced, not reduced. It seems like a reduction because we're moving something out of community, but we actually have duplicate coverage for a community. Currently, the Brights Grove Station is out of community, I think about 45–50% of the time. I'm just trying to pull that up. And it's pulled into Sarnia on standby. So it actually doesn't really get stationed there with much frequency. So it doesn't get to serve the community there unless it's called back into the community. The second challenge is it's located right up against the lake, so it reduces the access of travel for potential responses. So it's not well positioned to be able to meet the needs of the county in general or even the city of Sarnia. By bringing it down further south a little bit, it maintains what would be considered an acceptable response time arc, which would be about 10 minutes, and has the redundant coverage from the new Kamlaki station. With respect to the question about community consultation, I think that's very important. I think as we move forward with implementation with this, I would certainly look for support and assistance from council and members of the community to be able to help have those engagements and discussions.
I would like to move a motion at some point to, well now, that we accept the reports and the recommendations and we refer to each local council for 30 days for their input.
Okay.
Does that work? Like, do you have a different plan, Mr. Turner, in the sense how you're going to consult her?
Mr. Turner, please.
Sorry, through you, Warden. The timeline of this is to get this in front of council for discussion so that it can be submitted into the budget process for 2024 and onward. So I don't see that as an impairment to that. We would continue and have that in place with the budget, and it's the prerogative of council at budget time to choose to move forward or otherwise.
For that, and I'd be willing to move that motion at the right time, Mr. Warden.
Okay, and I see Councillor Dennis seconds that.
So that'll give you a chance, everyone, to do this.
Further discussion? Councillor Ferguson, please.
Thank you, Warden, through you. Back in 2019, in discussion with the ambulance response times into Brook Elvis and Don Euphemia, the numbers they showed at that time I disagreed with on the averages because I know how long distances were. I'm very pleased to see identified that we are lacking coverage, Don Euphemia, Brook Elwinson, and Inwood is identified as a station for the daytime. We are lacking in that area. This identifies that, and I'm very pleased to see that coming through. Thank you.
Thank you. Further questions? Sorry, Councillor Atkinson.
Thank you, Warden, through you to Mr. Turner. Thank you very much for your presentation, to you and your staff for pulling that together. I guess one thing that I would like to reiterate, my fellow councillor here said, is the consultation with the municipalities. I'm looking forward to a station in Plimpton, Wyoming, preferably in Kamlaki there, but this is the first we've really heard about it, and when we hear about it on the street, it's kind of a shock to us. So I look forward to the consultation and the communication between us as we move forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Anything further? Councillor McRoberts.
Thank you, Warden. Lovely presentation. I have questions about how many people do you have that are active on staff right now? How many of them, those that are not active and that are off, is that due to mental health, job injury, too many hours that they're working, the mental fatigue? And finally, out of all of that, do we have overtime, and is there an abundance of that? Seeing as we're coming in for budget, I just would like to know. Thank you.
Mr. Turner, please.
Through you, Warden. Thank you, Councillor, for the question. We do have people off. We have 82 active full-time staff members, and we have about 70 part-time staff members. Between that, I'm not sure what our current roster of those who are off work is for a myriad of items. It could be from stress injuries, physical injuries, illnesses, I think through the report, we do talk to, there's certainly an overrepresentation of occupational stress injuries experienced by paramedics. The job is not an easy one. And I think especially with the challenges coming out of COVID, those were challenges that paramedics faced on a daily basis, worried about what impacts that might have to their personal safety and then the safety of their families. And that was a tough couple of years to go through day in, day out, and not quite sure what was going to come out the other side. We started to see a fairly significant number of what we would call downstaffs, where we weren't able to fill trucks because we weren't able to find staff. That is an unusual occurrence, and we've been working really closely with our labor partners to try and come up with strategies to address that. It's also a reason why the #1 recommendation in this is to take a look at paramedic wellness and make sure that we do everything we can to help them and help not only respond when they're injured, but also help prevent either physical or mental health injuries on the workplace. Thank you. That's through you, Warden. Yeah, in terms of overtime, there has been an issuance of overtime as well. It tracks, strangely, we've had more downstaffing than overtime issuance, which ends up not putting us over budget, but there's been more overtime offered out than we would normally have.
Okay, any other questions before we call the vote on the motion on the floor? Councillor Bradley.
Yeah, I said 30 days. Is that sufficient? Probably at this time of year with other things going on, would it be wiser just to say that everyone respond back by January 30th? Does that work, Mr. Turner? Prior to budget?
Mr. Turner, please.
Through you, Warden, I think that would be sufficient.
Mr. Warden, I'd like to change just to say to the end of January to give councils enough time to, and maybe seek their own input too.
Okay, noted. If no other questions or comments, call the question. All in favor of the motion? Opposed, if any? That's unanimous. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Turner. Brings us to item number 11, minutes of open session of November the 1st. I look for a motion to receive, to adopt, Councillor Agar moves and Deputy Warden White seconds. All in favor? That's carried. Item number 12, correspondence. We have 5 items there. Look for a motion to receive and file. Councillor Cook and Councillor McRoberts seconds. All in favor? That's carried. And 12B is correspondence from member municipalities. We have 1 there. Look for a motion to receive that. And Councillor Brown moves. Councillor Boucher seconds. All in favor? That's carried. And item number 13, Board of Health. Dr. Dewick, please. Unless there's questions for this correspondence, Councillor Bradley?
A general question. There appears to be many cases of COVID in the Sarnia Lambton, and the health unit stopped publishing, except I think it's once a week, the number of cases. And I understood that, and I think there was a weariness, and I'm not sure the numbers were meaning much to anyone anymore. How are you feeling about heading into this winter with the COVID numbers, with the increase? Because it does appear to be rampant everywhere right now.
Dr. Dewick, please.
Through you, Warden. We have an excellent, comprehensive, interactive EPI report that is published now. We've integrated not only COVID-19 statistics, but also other respiratory viruses of interest throughout the respiratory season. Those include namely influenza and RSV. And so when we take a look at the COVID-19 trends so far this year, it mirrors what happened last year in 2022, where we did see a peak just before January, and then the numbers leveled off, and we saw another increase in the rates later on in the winter. So we are obviously aware We have our IPAC hub that helps our congregate care settings, long-term care homes, retirement homes, and we provide the vaccines as well.
If you were looking at last year at this time versus this year at this time, how are you feeling as the Chief Medical Officer of Health for the area about how we're entering into the winter period and what appears to be a fairly serious escalation in influenza and COVID? And there are other things we need to do, or you're satisfied with the present setup?
Dr. Dewick, please.
Through you, Warden, I am aware that the COVID rates have been elevated as they have been last year similarly. In terms of the flu rates, PHO, Public Health Ontario, I do believe has them as a lower to moderate rate at this point. We have consistently shared the message of the layers of protection heading into a respiratory season. And so number one, hygiene measures, washing your hands, coughing into your sleeve, sneezing into your sleeve, protecting yourself through vaccines that are available per your eligibility, and staying home when you're sick, trying not to transmit viruses to others. The measures that we've taken included being prepared with Ontario Health West, the Sarnia Lambton OHT, our community partners through respiratory preparedness activity that was conducted in September. We feel well prepared and look to our community to participate as well.
Any other questions, comments? If not, I'll look for a motion to receive and file both items. Councillor Ferguson and Councillor Case seconds. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. And moving on to item B, information reports. I have a motion to bring these 4 reports to the floor. Councillor Atkinson moves. Councillor McRoberts seconds. All in favor? That's carried. Is there any of these reports up for discussion? Seeing none, I'd look for a motion to receive and file. Councillor Dennis, seconded by Councillor Atkinson. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Dewick. Item number 14, information reports. Look for a motion to receive and file. The first under Corporate Services Division. Councillor Loosely and Councillor Cook seconds. All in favor? That's carried. Number B, or Section B, Finance Facilities and Court Services Division, a report dated November 29th regarding the Court Services third quarter stats and activity. Motion to receive and file, Councillor Atkinson and Councillor Case. All in favor? That's carried. Item number 15, committee minutes. I look to Councillor Agar, please.
I'd like to present the minutes from the Committee A.M. meeting on November 15th, 23.
Thank you. First motion was under Infrastructure Development Services to do with correspondence that was received and filed. Motion number 2 under Information Reports, same category. And number 3 was a report requiring a motion under regarding the Public Works Departmental staffing. And under Public Health Services Division was motion number 4. And number 5 under Cultural Services Division was an information report on cultural services. Number 6 was a report requiring a motion under regarding libraries donations from July the 1st to September the 30th. And number 7 was a report dated November 15th regarding museums, gallery, and archives collections. And under Corporate Services Division was number 8, a report regarding committee membership rotations and appointments for 2024. And number 9 was in camera, as well as 10 and 11 and 12 was to go back into open session, and 13 was adjournment. Councillor Agar, please.
I'd like to make a motion to accept the minutes as printed.
Thank you. Do we have a seconder for that? Councillor Sageman, seconds. All in favor? It's carried. Thank you. And Committee PM minutes, look to Councillor Ferguson.
Thank you, Ward. I'd like to present to the Council November 15th, 2023 minutes of PM Committee.
Thank you. Under Long-Term Care Division, the first motion was information report dated November the 15th regarding vulnerability occupancy, annual fire drills. Second was under Corporate Services Division, information report regarding social housing insurance renewal update. And number 3 was a report on the 2024 committee membership rotation and appointments. And number 4, under Finance, Facilities, and Court Services, information report on the Q3 budget monitoring update. And number 5, under Social Services, information reports. And number 6 was adjournment. Councillor Ferguson, please.
I'd like to move these minutes as presented.
Thank you. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Dennis, seconds. All in favor? That's carried. Item number 16, items tabled from previous meetings. We have an information report dated November 29th regarding the rural transportation follow-up. Councillor Bradley.
I was going to refer that into the new year, and then we put this other input into that too. Does that make sense from a staff point of view? Or receive it and then open it up for more input from some of the other places?
Yeah, so that's fine. Councillor Brown, if you want to table it for now, again, that's no problem. So moved. Do you have a seconder for that? Deputy Warden White seconds. Any discussion? All in favor? Oh, Councillor Lucy, sorry.
Yeah, wouldn't we just leave this tabled? And we don't need another motion. It's already tabled. Just leave it tabled, Mr. Ward.
Yeah, this makes clear direction that it's tabled until what Councillor Bradley is asking for, so I'll let the motion stand. All in favor of the motion? Opposed, if any, that's carried. And number 17, notice of motion. So the A was Councillor Bradley requested reconsideration. I understand that. Would you like to speak to that, Councillor Bradley?
I was informed by the CAO that my motion was illegal, since I was not one that voted the other way, so I withdraw that back, and I'll wait for Councillor Case's motion.
Okay, thank you. And that brings us to Councillor Case. I believe he did not intend this to be in a notice of motion, but I'll let him speak to that. Councillor Case, please.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Warden, and through to County Council. It was not a notice of motion. What it was an option to Councillor Bradley's motion, and that was to be included as an option B of sorts. And so that's what the intent was. But since this has gone out to every county councilor, I have received some texts and calls, and I think I will make the motion today so there can be discussion around it based on some of the feedback that I've got. Just for a little history for folks that weren't here, we did do this once, probably, I'm going to say 14 years ago or so, and we did do it for a year. I guess when it comes to the committee meeting structure, one of the concerns that everybody seems to have from time to time is the time that it takes to have a meeting. Sometimes it literally, honestly, takes more time to walk from your house to your vehicle than it does for us to have a committee meeting. So what this does, by getting everybody together as a committee of whole, it gives you an opportunity to hear what both committees, the traditional two-committee system, is being done and said at that time. You hear the debate, you're part of that discussion. It's still 2 meetings a month. It's not one, just to be very clear to everybody. So it's still 2 meetings a month, but we sit as committee of a whole. And then we hear all of the committee business as a committee of a whole, as a council of a whole. And we can decide and debate, and everybody has the opportunity to take part in that. So again, it was done for 1 year back 14 or 15 years ago. I may have been the guy who made the motion at that time. And then after a year, it was decided that council of the day liked the two system better, and we went back to that. So I will put it on the floor If I have a seconder, I've already spoke to it, Mr. Warden, I apologize, but if I have a seconder, I will be happy to hear what the debate is, and obviously look for the direction of my colleagues on County Council, so thank you.
I see Councillor Bradley with his hand up for seconder, so open it up to discussion. Councillor Lucy, and then Councillor Hand.
Thank you, Warden. I just wondered, will we get back into weighted votes, or are these going to be just single votes like in the committee?
I will refer that to Mr. Tifo, but I'm assuming that it's the same as committee now.
Thank you, Warden. That's correct. In the committee structure is meant to be less formal than, of course, council, and including in that less formality, if I could put it that way, it is sort of an equal vote. It's not a weighted vote in the committee structure. And the other thing that needs to be recalled is that Councillor Case is correct. This was attempted in 2008, reverted back to the two-committee system, what we call the Committee A.M. PM in 2009 for that purpose, to ensure that there's less formality. But ultimately, the structure, the committee structure, the committee rules from a Committee A.M. PM structure or Committee of the Whole structure would not necessarily change in that context.
Follow-up, Councillor Loosely.
Just that I support that, thank you.
Councillor Hand, please.
I'm just wondering if Councillor Case is suggesting this as a one-year trial or just to move into it.
Councillor Case.
So being that it was never really intended to be a notice of motion, but we are here today, I'm obviously open-minded to what my colleagues would suggest around the council chamber to that. It was a one-year pilot of sorts back in the day, and we went back and we looked at it, and it was changed back at the time. You got to remember, back in the day, it was a much different system that we had, process we had. We didn't have our meetings live streamed. We used to meet upstairs in the committee room number 1. It was a different time, a different process in place, and that's what was decided on, to take it back. The former county council members decided to go back to the former system. So I'm open to that. That can be something that can be adjusted through the motion, whatever council feels they'd like to do.
Well, as the mover of the motion, I guess it would be up to you to add that, Councillor Case. So
I am happy to do that, Mr. Warden, in the spirit of time and cooperation. Thank you.
Thank you. I see Councillor Agar with his hand up.
I'm good with the committee of the whole, combining the two, but not on the same day as we already have county council, because right now, the last while, we've had very few items on there. But what happens if they swell up and we get a lot of items? Like, I wouldn't want a whole day, because you lose track.
And I don't think that was the intention, Councillor Case. You intended to be the same as it is now. Yes. And I will add that I know we've had some late meetings this year, but we hate to see change unless things get, in case things go back to the way they used to be, which was pretty full meetings, but this won't change the intention of that. So any further discussion before I call the vote? Seeing none. All in favor of the motion?
Do you want to record the vote just for the record? So.
Okay, recorded vote requested by Councillor Bradley. So I will turn it over to Mr. Beauchamp, please.
Thank you. We will start the vote with Councillor McRoberts. Thank you. Councillor Brown. Thank you. Councillor Sageman.
Yes, or
4. Thank you. Deputy Warden White. Thank you. Councillor Agar. Thank you. Councillor Atkinson?
No.
Thank you. Councillor Bushi?
Yes.
Thank you. Councillor Bradley?
Yes.
Thank you. Councillor Broad?
Yes.
Thank you. Councillor Case?
Yes.
Thank you. Councillor Cook?
Yes.
That's a yes. Councillor Dennis?
Yes.
That's a yes. Thank you. Councillor Ferguson?
No.
That's a no. Thank you. Councillor Hand?
Yes.
That's a yes. Thank you. Councillor Loosely?
In favor?
That's a yes. Thank you. Warden Marriott?
Yes.
Yes. Thank you. That passes.
Okay, moving on to item number 18, other business. Is Deputy Warden White, please.
There it is. All right, thank you. Thank you, Warden Marriott. Just want to ask the question because this is our last get-together before the cold weather sets in. I want to ask how we are moving towards getting our unsheltered folks off the streets overnight. Another incident was brought to some of our attention this morning of an unhoused person found suffering through cold in the early morning hours this morning. And this is just the start of the season. So again, those who may not be able to access shelters remain vulnerable. And as the winter sets in, I'm looking to see what we are able to do to accommodate folks who might not fit into that system and to protect them from the elements in the off hours.
Ms. Johnson, would you like to respond to that, please?
I believe Ms. Colasante's on
Oh,
virtually.
okay. Yes, I realize she's online now. Ms. Colasanti, please. Sorry about that.
Okay, through you, Warden Marriott, to Councillor White. Thank you for that question, and you're right, the cold weather is here. We do have spaces still at both the Inn of the Good Shepherd and the Out of the Cold Emergency Overflow. While they are very full each evening, there are still spaces there, and we can accommodate anyone who's willing to come in outside of the cold. I think your question might be for some of the individuals who have chosen not to come into the emergency system. And we do know on any given night, there can be up to 10 individuals who have been staying outside. Unfortunately, we really don't have any other solution for them other than to encourage them to come inside out of the cold. Like I said, we have spaces. Our outreach team is following up with them almost on a daily basis if we're able to find them and ask them to please come inside. For those individuals, it's really hard to say what other solution could be used. They're very untrusting of government or of any workers. They, in some cases, suffer from mental health issues or excessive drug use. And as much as we'd like them to come in, some of them are still choosing not to. So we'll continue to work with them on solutions. We have been able to move over 86 individuals since we've opened into the either emergency shelter from the streets or into permanent housing. So we continue to work with them on individual solutions. Thank you.
Thank you. Any, Councillor Bradley?
Just to follow up to that, because that's not what exactly is happening out there. And yes, there are very difficult people. But when you get those individuals who, like the incident that was reported to some of us this morning, we just can't let them stay there. We just can't let them be out on the street. And I've had a couple suggestions made about perhaps some small, I don't want to call them substations, but some places which could actually help people who are in that type of distress. Like, I'm not accepting that, yes, the shelters aren't full, so that's why we don't need a homeless area. Okay, that ship has sailed. But the reality, and living and working in downtown Sarnia, particularly, you see it all the time, and people don't know what to do. And we're talking crisis people. And it's not a criticism of the people who are out there on the front line, but there are these aberrations of people that are just, like I'm frustrated, I'm sure you are, is how do we get to that group? Because, we just saw in the last 2 days, and I get the reports about people sleeping under the Vital Street overpass, which is just a totally unsafe place to be. So I don't know if we have to up our game to try to get to this very, difficult group, because otherwise we're going to lose someone on the streets this winter, not just us, but across this country.
Ms. Colasani, could you respond to that, please?
Through you, Ward Marriott, to Councillor Bradley. I understand what you're saying. Even if we were to open a small, an additional spot, those individuals are not going to come in. They won't come in now. We did a survey of the individuals using the Housing and Homeless Resource Center, and they tell us that they feel safer there than anywhere else they felt, that they feel it is a low barrier shelter, that most of the barriers they felt in the past have been removed. So I hear what you're saying, but those individuals will not come inside, and we can't force them. I mean, as of today, we have no means to force someone unless police are able to take them to hospital and have them, stay there through the MHAR team. And sometimes that happens, sometimes it can't happen. So without, any additional supports that way, there's nothing we can do to force those individuals to move. And as I said, there have been some occasions where we've put someone in a hotel if they are really struggling with mental health and don't want to come into shelter, but often they won't even do that. So all we can do is continue to engage with them and try to move them into one of the systems that we have in place.
So I'm just going to one follow-up question. And I asked you, I think, this question last year. Do you have the resources needed on a 24-hour basis to get out to see people that are in distress?
Ms. Colasani, please.
Your Marriott, to Councillor Bradley. We don't have staff that work 24/7, if that's the question, but our staff are well aware of where individuals are. And as I said, they're going there on a daily basis. They do some flex hours early in the morning, later in the day. When we know that bad weather's coming, we really make an effort to go to the last spot where we found an individual. We use the GIS system and map people so that we can find them. As you know, this is a transient population, and that's also challenging. So I do feel we have the resources in place. We're certainly lobbying the province for more resources to assist us. But I think for dealing with that population, unless there's some type of change in legislation that can force people to come in, and right now that's not there, I do feel we have the resources in place.
Thank you. Any other? Councillor Cook.
Thank you, Warden Marriott. As chair of the Lambton County Accessibility Committee for the last 5 years, I just want to thank the committee for the great work they do to audit our our county-owned buildings and services that we offer. Unfortunately, we had one of our long-term members, Luana Camerson, pass away in October, and I want to send my condolences out to her and her family. What this does, though, is it leaves our committee short a couple members, and we're trying to recruit where we can, but it's hard. So I guess I'm just going to ask my fellow councillors who do have accessibility committees if perhaps one of their members would be considered to sit on the Lambton County Accessibility Committee in addition to their own, and perhaps fill one of our positions. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cook. Deputy Warden White.
I'll just follow up on that then. Could we have the information, schedule, et cetera, contact info and anything else, just to help me pass it along to some of our members?
Councillor Cook, please.
Thank you. Yes, Lori Webb is the manager from the county who's looking after our works with us. So if you would reach out to her, she could give you that.
Okay, any other business before we leave this? Seeing none, I will move to item number 19, notice of bylaws. Mr. Beauchamp, please.
Thank you, Warden Marriott. It has been moved by Councillor Agar and seconded by Councillor Atkinson that bylaws number 31 and 32 of 2023 as circulated be taken as being read a first and a second time.
All in favor? That's carried.
It is moved by Councillor Atkinson and seconded by Councillor Agar that bylaws number 31 and 32 of 2023 as circulated be taken as being read a third and final time.
All in favor? That is carried as well. Thank you. Before I look to motion to adjourn, I just want to thank all of County Council for a very good year, everything that everybody's contributed, and wish everybody the best going into December and the holiday season. Wish everybody a safe and healthy time off, and The next meeting will be February the 7th, 2024, with in-camera set to start at 9 a.m. I look for a motion to adjourn, please. Councillor Atkinson moves, Councillor Loosely seconds, all in favor? That is carried. Should have also said to staff as well, thanks for everything that they've done. And we will be meeting upstairs for brunch. Please join me for O Canada.
O Canada, our home and native land, true patriot love in all of us command. With glowing hearts we see thee rise, the true north, strong and free, from far